Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Sydney Banks to people throughout the world. Today, we have Cassandra Ogier with us. Cassandra is a passionate mentor inspired through deeply seeing potential in people and holding space for their natural discovery and response to life from a place of grounded connection to their true nature in somatic embodiment, distinct from the mind. Her experience spans over 15 years as a leader in the development of nature and horse-based personal reflection programs. Cassandra is a certified equine guided educator, a Three Principles registered practitioner, and the founder and director of the Reflective Horse. And I'll put Cassandra's full bio and various websites underneath the YouTube recording. So if any of you want to get in touch with her, you'll know how. Cassandra, thank you so much. I'm so excited that you're here. This is your first webinar with us, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to share.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm very happy to see familiar faces, which makes me feel very grounded. And that is the basis of what I want to share with you today, is grounding and what that looks like. And, you know, just looking out at all of you and seeing Ellen, who actually was the first person that really introduced me to the three principles, it just helps me, as I always get when I'm on a three principles webinar, that I just get this feeling of deeply being able to drop in. It's kind of like a held space that I experience. And it was what I was contemplating when I was thinking about, you know, how I was going to talk today and what might arise. And what came to mind was that I had the great pleasure of sitting with quite a lot of the three principles older, seasoned people that were connected to Sydney Banks back in the day. And it was called the Soul-Centered Series. And it was actually a 6-month program, but every 6 weeks or so, we got to sit with one of these amazing masters, if you will, although they would not call themselves that. They're much too humble. And I was thinking about the feeling that I had when I was sitting in that space. And what we all shared and I commented on was that it's a contagious feeling to be in that grounding and to be in that presence of somebody who really knows their own grounding, and that we all actually do that for each other. You know, on a daily basis, and we really do it for ourselves. And the only thing about, or the difference, I think, is when we move out of that space and we're not sitting with this this master, or in yoga or in meditation, is how we carry this forward into our lives, and we don't go straight back into our head and into just the distractions in the mind. So I wanted to introduce to you, as I felt when I was sitting in the chair, you know, going through, listening to all of these people sharing their experiences and sharing what they learned from Sydney Banks, is to bring you into that centered presence, just in the moment. Oh, we have a kitten here helping out. And so I'm just going to invite you, if you feel comfortable, just to shut your eyes for a moment and to just take a couple of deep breaths and to feel your feet on the ground. wherever they are. Maybe your ankles if you're sitting on the floor. And feeling your butt on the chair. And noticing your sacrum, your tailbone, and how it naturally wants to release. How your hips are very solid and grounded by gravity, and that the weight of just that being with no pressure, nothing to do, you don't have to speak, there's no response needed. What that brings to you in this moment, just focusing on your feet, maybe wiggling your toes, your butt on the chair, the heaviness of your belly, allowing your belly to relax. And just coming up through your diaphragm, your rib cage, and feeling the space that is in there naturally. And noticing that a breath will just come as you go through your body up to your chest, and just noticing if there's any tightness. Just give a little smile on your chest. There doesn't need to be any pressure to do anything. Allowing your shoulders to drop, your neck to be flexible. And coming up to your head, just checking in with your jaw. And lifting your eyebrows up to the sky, and then letting them just drop down. Just allowing a few breaths to naturally arise and fall. Bringing your attention back to your belly, to your hips, to your sacrum, being soft in the chair, and back down to your feet. Allowing the natural centering of gravity and presence in your body. You may notice that you have some thoughts passing by. That's okay. Taking one deep breath in your own time. And when you're ready, just gently opening your eyes and coming back into this moment. And just noticing how you feel. And if there's any change. And what I want to suggest is that this is the place that we can always come back to. It's the place of isness that Sydney Banks in the old days used to talk about. And that it's there and available to us at all times if we just take the time to check in. And my feeling is that the body is what we were given when we came here. It has a natural intelligence. It is natural intelligence. Oh. And it's valuable in the way that we respond to it and sit in it. No, I have a kitten biting me. So I'm just going to invite you to be open to that possibility, that this is always available for you to check in wherever your mind is at the time. And I want to just hear from you when we have some time at the end to see what your experience is of that, and to share with me any thoughts that you have. So I'm going to just throw this kitten off my lap. So I'm just wanting to share with you a little about how I got to the principles. In 2017, I was diagnosed with a lymphoma, and I discovered that I had a tumor in my abdomen, and had been very busy in business and running a successful equine assisted therapy business. And really the calling that I realized was that I had to stop. I had to completely give up all of that that I'd created, and just to be in the present with what was happening in my body. However much I didn't want to let go of it, it was something that really life insisted in me actually letting go. And at the time, I would say that I had a really spiritual practice, but I was really not understanding exactly what was happening. And so how it showed up for me in those days was that I felt like I needed to be really positive to be able to move through this, really uncomfortable situation with chemo, and how horrible that was and uncomfortable that was, and also the unknown, what was going to happen. And I think the big thing that came up for me was this thought, which was, I can't do this anymore. Like, it was felt so devastating. But when I had that thought, I would always want to counter that with feeling positive. And I felt that if I wasn't on the up and up, and I wasn't feeling, that there was hope, that I would kind of fall into some sort of abyss. I was very scared of what it would be like to actually feel my feelings on a deep level. And I had the opportunity to talk with Ellen Friedman. And Ellen really didn't say very much to me, but one of the things that really impacted me and caught my curiosity was that I told her about this overwhelming feeling that I was trying to contain, and felt like I was kind of keeping the lid on this emotion. And she simply said to me, what would it be like if you allowed yourself to feel that feeling? And in that moment, I just started to cry. And it felt like it was going to go on forever. And just the allowing of it, and being held in this space, which I talked about earlier, of just somebody purely being there and listening, I found that this emotion passed really quickly. Something that I had been so terrified would put me into a hole that I wouldn't be able to get out of passed. And I would say it probably took less than a minute. And with Ellen on the phone, not even on a webinar, I felt deeply held. And I felt a deep sense of peace come over my body. And everything just looked so much clearer. And I was outside in a view rather like this. And suddenly I could see everything. Suddenly I could really see what was going on in this present moment. And nothing had overwhelmed me. I just let this feeling pass through. And it was a huge breakthrough for me, just to know that I don't have to be frightened of my emotions, that my whatever the emotion is, if it's stirred by a feeling, which it appeared to be in my case, that it will actually just pass by, and that there isn't anything to resist or push away. And what I've come to understand is that is healing. That is me letting off pressure, if you will, that I've built up and I've pushed down because of a thought of my thinking that I needed to be positive all the time. So my experience was that somehow that really put me into my body in that moment, that this experience of looking out and being able to see everything so clearly with this kind of clear space that I created through letting my emotions there, had me being in my body in a very grounded way. So from there, I could really see that it was a thought that was bringing this emotion into play, and that my thought was of hopelessness, and that once that thought had played out in an emotion, my tears, my sadness, my frustration, there was this empty space. And my invitation, I suppose, is to just to allow that, not to be frightened of that. You know, it could be that it's any other emotion, but I think what we tend to do, or I've tended to do, is to label one or other as good or bad. And that I'm really okay when I'm in a happy feeling or I'm in a light feeling, but I'm really not okay when I'm in any kind of discomfort whatsoever. But there is no difference, really. It's just a feeling, an emotion that is passing by. And even if it's something that seems difficult, it is passing through. And it doesn't matter whether it's caused by a thought that's come in from the past or whether it's in the now. But the passing nature is just so much clearer to me. So I'd love to just hear if there's anything that's come up for anybody that they would like to share. I'd love to tell you a little bit more about the horses and how that's helped me, but I'm really interested to hear whether there's anything that you want to share at this point. I'd love to hear.
I think everyone knows this by now, but you can either unmute yourself to speak, or if you click on the participant icon, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen, it will open a little white window on the right side, and there is a raise hand button there, so you can do that as well.
Yeah, and any time that you want to raise your hand, I'd be really happy to hear. Yeah,
Yes.
so, you know, please go ahead.
I just want to say it was so beautiful to hear your story. And I chuckled when you said I hardly said anything, because it's like, I don't know, me didn't hardly say anything. So, but I love that that's what your experience was, or, you know, at the time. And the other thing that I'm just really overcome with is like the feeling that comes through you is for me, my experience of the feeling that's coming through you was present with the first word you spoke until the last word, the most recent word you spoke. And that your story like it was just prevalent in everything that you shared. And I'm just really struck by that. And and the other thing, it's like, what I heard when you were saying that, it's like I was so wrapped up in my symptoms, and then there was a space where I was in my life, and when I was in my life, I could see the beauty, I could see the colors, I could see the scenery, I could see beyond labels, diagnoses, and physical symptoms, and that is a beautiful thing.
Thanks so much, Ellen. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd love to just respond. Two things. One is, isn't it interesting that we, in that exchange, that we had these two different experiences, you know, and you're saying like, no, I'm, you know, usually I'm filling that space, but my experience of you was holding that space. And that I mean, it's such a huge point, because we're experiencing the world in completely different ways. And in a way, I think I'm suggesting that grounding is what we're providing for each other. And really, that's kind of all that is. You know, that whatever it was I needed in that moment, I received from you. You know, I trust you. I mean, I didn't know you, but I trusted you in the way that you heard me or listened. Or so I think that that's so beautiful, because you know, as a facilitator, or as a person who holds space for others, we tend to get very focused on ourselves, and actually to be allowing whatever it is that comes through naturally is enough for someone else to find their own ground. So I love that. I love that. Yeah. And the other thing that came to me was I've been doing a little bit of writing about a travel experience, or I'm at a point where I'm just writing about being in another country for the first time. And it was the first time that I'd really traveled, sort of in my late 20s, into Asia, and how the same thing happened. Like, I was really nervous about, you know, being somewhere that I didn't know, and it wasn't all good. You know, there were definitely feelings of anxiety, and there were feelings of insecurity and the unknown. But somehow or other, it also gave me this incredible picture of how alive and awake everything was, because I didn't know it. And so Ellen saying, you know, that when I'd allowed this emotion to pass through me, that suddenly I could see clearly it wasn't about me. So I think that, you know, it's just something that happens, or is potentially happening for us all the time, that we're getting out of our way, and we're you know, releasing and relaxing in whatever way that looks like. That could be an emotion passing through, or it could be you know, anxious that you might be going to say something on this webinar, you know, and you know, your heart's going to start going. Mine was, and actually my heart keeps sort of doing that too. It's like, oh, what am I doing, you know? And then I look at all of you, and I know what we're talking about, and that feeling passes. So we're having opportunities all the time not to look in the direction of a scary thought, or an uncomfortable thought, or an anxious thought. We can allow it to go through, to pass through us, and still continue on. Like, I'm still talking, you know, I'm still here. So thanks, Ellen. That it was lovely to have that inspiration from your comments. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions at this point? So yeah, maybe let's talk a little bit more about this grounding. I definitely have discovered that it's so useful being present in the body, and I think that that's my go-to to start anything. Just to, you know, I think maybe my experience of clients is that a lot of people don't know what that means, and it's surprising, surprises them too, that that natural gravity that Sydney Banks also talked about, of our physical body, is the intelligence of nature. Us actually residing in it and trusting in it is it's a gift. It's what we were given. We're here in a body, and you know, in my experience, in the early days, if I was studying any kind of spiritual idea or concept, it seemed very heady. And it didn't, it almost felt like I was transcending, you know, that if I sit in meditation, I'm sort of going somewhere else. But my experience of grounding and being in nature and allowing that quietening, or even if we're in a conference room or we're on a Zoom call, to be aware of your feet on the ground and your butt on the seat and your belly being relaxed and relaxing is something that is present for us in every single moment, and it just creates a pause. It's just a pause where, if we're tangled up in something, or maybe we're even in an argument, I'm not saying it's easy, but we can bring our attention to that grounding. If we're getting stirred up, the way that I see it is that the energy in our body is actually going from being grounded and centered to being restricted and tight. And I really like to think about that as that's what happens when we're in our thinking. So if we're relaxed and we're comfortable and we're grounded, we're more in the presence of or access to that peace, that isness, that you know, that the beauty of just being in the moment. And when we get stirred up in our thinking, we're literally retracting, and our body is actually getting tight. And I'm sure that you can all relate to that, you know, you might have a place in your body. And funnily enough, mine was in my sort of solar plexus, my abdomen. And so just relaxing is always a grounding point. And when we're in our thinking, and when I'm saying our thinking, I'm talking about our personal mind that is chattering away there, just, you know, narrating the whole show. It's getting tight. There's a tightness, a clenching, and that we have the ability at all times to notice that and to relax and release. So we're actually, we're releasing a thought. We're releasing an idea that we're holding on to. But if we get used to just being in the body, it actually points us in that direction all the time. So rather than, yes, some of us might find that easy to notice when you're in a thought, oh, I'm in my thinking, that might not always be the case, that you can catch yourself because you've just grabbed onto a thought and you're running with it. And it's really hard to know how far you've run with it, and that's okay too. It's not that there's any wrong or right, but my experience is that coming back to my body in a relaxed way gives me an indication. It's an indicator, which I love in the three principles, that a lot of people talk about the body being an indicator. So the feeling being an indicator. And the way that I see it is my body is the indicator. If it's feeling all uptight and I'm clenched, then I know that I'm in my thinking, and I've got the opportunity to let go. I think I've probably repeated that so many times now. You've got the point. So let me just stop here for a minute and just see if there's any thoughts or questions where we're at.
Zoe?
Hi, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Very good. Cassandra,
Hi.
it's so wonderful to hear you speak of your experience. And I love that your grounding presence with the equine therapy, how it parallels with our heartfelt presence as we're grounding within our true nature, whether it is interacting with others or just in our own thought storm. Could you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yes, thank you so much for asking about that. Yes. So, I don't know if any of you know horses, and whether you do, Zoe. I'm figuring that you might.
A little, yeah.
A little, okay. So, just the nature of their being, they are, well, 120, 1,200 pounds, 900 to 1,200 pounds in weight. They're extremely solid. They're extremely grounded. And what I love, the analogy that I've kind of talked about just very recently, is if you imagine getting on a horse, whether you know what that's like or not, you're getting onto a sentient being, like a living, breathing, responsive creature. And we're going to go extreme here because I think it kind of gets to the point well. And we might think we're in control, but we're not, because that being has its own, like we all do, has its own idea about life and responses to it. And people might tell us that we're in control. You pull on the reins, or you kick to go, you pull to stop. But then when you get on, you realize, like, oh my goodness, this is pretty scary, and it might not go, my way. And the best thing to do when we're feeling that uncomfortable is not to go with that feeling of discomfort, which means that we would be clenching and hanging on for dear life. The thing to be doing would be to relax and to release and to be more in a place of grounding or a place of harmony. But as is our nature, when something scary happens, we want to cling on. and we get really in our heads, and we start thinking, oh my God, the horse is going to run away, you know, oh my God, there's a plastic bag on the trail, the horse is going to spook. And it could be, that could be a thought, you know, oh, you know, whatever that is, we could get taken away by that. But the best thing for us to do with the horses and the parallel of life, as you mentioned, is to relax, to be present, and to literally relax the body, like not to be clinging on, to relax and breathe. And therefore it calms your nervous system, calms the nervous system of the horse, and we end up hopefully in a good situation in the present moment. Now, that's an extreme, because in the work that I do, people don't get on the horse. It's this is for us to notice our grounding, but in the same way, we get to, the horse really loves to be with us when we're in our grounding. So the horse feels safe and feels the sense of inner leadership. So it's not really about needing to lead, but it's just a sense of your own self-honoring, your own grounding, your own wisdom, really trusting in that. And when you do that, when we do that around the horses, they take a breath out too. And they have these signals which we learn about. They lick and they chew, or they yawn, or they roll on the ground. And they show that they have relaxed and released. And it's so amazing for us to actually see in real time the effect that it has when we let go of our thinking mind. Because if I'm going in with the horses, or anyone is, and they're saying, you know, we're going to get chatter, like, oh my God, is the horse going to like me? Like, oh my God, you know, everyone else has had a horse come up to them and I'm only standing here. We just know we're not in the right place. So it's a mirror of exactly where we are in our thinking, or where we are in our grounding, or our presence, or however we want to say that. So does that answer your question, Zoe?
That was beautiful. I could see how wisdom, divine mind, is like the horse. When I'm caught up spinning in my thinking, trying to figure it out, and my body's tense, versus allowing that relaxation and for the wisdom to speak. I mean, I just saw very clearly and distinctly the parallel between divine mind and personal mind through your analogy of working with the equine. It just, I love metaphors, and it was very clear. So thank you. Yes. Nice.
My pleasure. And thanks for asking about the horses. Yeah, good to meet you. And you're right. I mean, I think that it's a giant metaphor, working with the horses in every way. We're getting biofeedback, like living biofeedback. And the thing about the horses is, or nature really, it's just not so clear. When we're with another person, it doesn't feel so clear. And then, you know, I'd be going back to what Ellen was saying in the beginning is, you know, when we're talking about presence and being there for someone, you know, that we're not thinking about what we're going to say in response to. We're just there. We're really there. We're really listening to what this person is saying. We're not in the idea of like how we're going to respond to it. So the horses are like that. They're super, super clear. There's no judgment. There's nothing personal. It's totally impersonal. So we get to We get to see that thinking or that innate wisdom in real time. Yeah. And it's actually just coming all together for me. I have worked with horses and with people for a long time now, but I didn't really know what was happening. And it felt like a struggle in a way. And I think that was partially why I came to this big halt in my life, because I wasn't seeing what was really happening. I was, working with a lot of people, and a lot of people in rehab, and a lot of people who were very conflicted in their lives at the time. And I knew that the horses were bringing peace. And in fact, I really knocked out any of the psychological, inquiry that often comes along with equine therapy, and just noticed it's the being. It's being with horses, not doing with horses, that is helping. And of course, now that I've come to understand the principles, initially, that's what opened my mind to exactly what Zoe just mentioned, is that the innate wisdom that people are coming back to in these moments of being, of letting go, they are actually coming back into their innate wisdom. They're knowing the intelligence of nature. They're connecting with that, and they have, they're just being in the presence of really a divine being, who is totally grounded in the moment. And that was what was healing. And often we get to the end of a session and no one would be talking. Everyone would want to just sit. And I wondered what that was at the time. Like people would stare into the middle distance and not want to get off their seat. And it's the same as sitting in the soul-centered series with these, wise people who sat with Sydney Banks. Sydney Banks was probably very like a horse. There's no judgment, there's no personal agenda. It's totally in the moment, and it's contagious, and we just drop in to this beautiful feeling that is distinct and separate from our personal thinking. And I didn't realize that. So when I realized that was what was happening, after, not just like a light bulb, this has taken a while, in the last 3 months, I've just noticed, oh, this is what's happening. People are just coming back to their grounding, the nature of grounding. It might not be horses, it could be sailing or hiking, or, the opportunity is there all the time. But what I realized was how much effort I was putting into facilitating, and that I felt like I was needing to do a lot more than I really did, and that I could really trust that people would find their way, and that it might not be right then, but they might look back on it. And think, wow, I remember when I was with the horses, or I was in nature, that I felt this peace, and that people could come back to it. But now I get to see where people are in their personal thinking and when they're in their grounding, and being able to literally point that out and say, yeah, I hear that, maybe that's the story, and that's okay. You might be in the story for a while, you might get caught up in that, but your true nature, and actually where all inspiration and insight arises from, is that place of being. So we've got about 10 minutes, and I'd love to hear if you've got any thoughts or how you're feeling or anything that comes up, anything that's been inspired. And you know, I could have waited in that pause for a little bit longer, because that's what I learned with the three principles, is these pauses. First of all, I think, this is a bit funny, you know. Then I realized, oh, okay, I just relax and release. And then I can feel it. Oh my God, like I can feel it. I can feel the isness. I can feel the possibility, rather than being like clenched and like, oh my God, this is really uncomfortable. There's a silence. How do I feel it? What am I going to say? You know, just like, just relax, just release. We've always got this opportunity to be okay with that stillness and not have to fill it.
If no one else has something, I'll add something. I just had this beautiful insight about kind of my relationship with horses and how I love them, but I had no interest in really, like I love them. I loved them from a distance, but I had no interest in really being with them. And I know that I did horseback riding when I was really young at like camp, but I have no, I don't have any memory. I don't remember what happened. But what I'm aware of now is how controlling I was living my life. And so from a controlled place, like my wisdom said, don't go near a horse, because if you think you're in control and you're like, it's not safe to be around a horse if you think you're the one that's in control. And I did. Like, that's how I lived my life. And so it just makes sense why I loved them, but I could just see something clear about that. Is that making sense?
Yes. Yes,
And,
definitely.
and how, in my recent encounters with horses, like how beautiful it was. And there was just no, like all of that was gone, but I didn't really know why.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. Yeah, too. It's beautiful, you know, and to know that your wisdom was there in the beginning, you know, like that intuition that you realize was always there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was this fear, but it wasn't of the horse. But now I see it was of me.
Wow.
And that the horse, like I couldn't handle on some level, like I knew that I couldn't handle the horse reflecting my own fear. Or something like that. I don't know. I can make up a lot of stories.
Wow. No, I love that. Yeah, that is so interesting, that reflection. Yes. That there's something about it that you're drawn to, but the fact that it isn't controllable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we think it is, but
mm-hmm.
yeah.
And if no one else has anything to share, I mean, I just love some of your stories about what's happened with people and horses. And so, you know, like, you know, specific stories of, I know there's one that keeps on, you know, coming through but I'd love to hear other stories that you have about people that have had just really dramatic shifts in consciousness, even without getting on the horse or riding the horse, or yeah. So
yeah, just to keep it in sort of in the perspective of grounding, yeah, I would share that. Yeah, there's one of the exercises that we sometimes do, and it's sort of, in a way, it's not something we do first off the bat, you know. So I don't want to scare you all, but we have something that's kind of like a round pen, and we'll put one horse and a person, and usually the person has chosen the horse. They've, you know, made a connection with a horse, and they will go into a round pen. And there really isn't anything to do with the horse. We're not training the horse. We're not getting the horse to do something, but just being in the space with the horse, and being encouraged to be in this grounding, to feel your feet on the ground, to you know, be weighted in your belly, just feel the weight of your body, and to relax and breathe. And what's coming to mind is that recently one of my mentees went into the round pen, and the horse freaked out. The horse was just wanting to be with other horses on the outside of the round pen. And actually the horses were right there. But he was running backwards and forwards, calling, and just not seemingly in his body. He's definitely in his thinking. Like, where are they? They're going to leave without me. She went through a lot of emotions, my mentee, at the time, because she wanted to be in this grounding and to help him to calm down. But what she came to was that she actually just needed to be in her grounding for her, and that she couldn't control what the horse, was doing and thinking. And when she realized that in this process, which we really had no idea what was happening on the outside of the pen, he calmed down. He didn't calm down completely, but he started to move towards her. So he naturally went over to spend more time closer to her, and then he'd start going backwards and forwards. But the shift for her was realizing that when she went in, or when this started, she was trying to be grounded to make him be different. But when that didn't work, she came back to just being grounded for herself. And the being grounded for herself made him feel safe and comfortable and wanting to be closer. So I just think that you know, it's not, you know, it's a massive shift on a profound level, you know, that in relationship, which often that is what comes up with the horses, is something around the way we're relating. And that we, you know, we can't, as we started in the beginning saying, you know, I had one experience and Ellen had another experience when we were talking all those years ago. We just being with ourselves and not getting caught up in the galloping horse, and trying to fix the galloping horse. It's like, no, I'm just gonna be with myself. I'm gonna be in my own grounding. And is there anything else to do? You know, that's what it showed up for all of us who were watching, is, wow, she just came back to her own grounding, to herself, and everything figured itself out. Like, wow, you know, that's a good one for all of us. Yeah, because we do feel like we want to control, or, you know, we want to make it go our way, you know, We don't want it to be uncomfortable. We want to fix something outside of us, you know, but coming back to that grounding. And, you know, as I heard so many times, Sydney Banks going for a walk, taking people for a walk. I heard so many stories of, you know, just lovely stories, you know, of somebody waiting for a profound, you know, something that he was going to say. And he'd say, oh, wow, you know, just look at that tree, or look at that sunset, or, you know, just bringing us into the grounding that he was in. And that's what we're all doing for ourselves and others in varying ways.
Anyone else have a comment or a question for Cassandra? Oh, I love the stories that you shared about horses. Really beautiful, and how you tied it in with this understanding. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Yeah, it was really, really lovely. I have two announcements I just want to let everybody know about. First is the next webinar is Tuesday, November 24th with Eric Zaniga. And the other thing is, in case you haven't seen it or heard, 3PGC is having a practitioner event, but it's open to everyone, whether you're a practitioner or not. It's next weekend, no, not this coming, but the following weekend, November 13th, 14th, and 15th. And if you would like to learn more about it, and hopefully you'll attend, you can find it on 3pgc.org. So yeah, so hopefully we'll see some of you at that too. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your coming on live.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. It was so good to see you. Feeling very happy and grounded.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Yeah, you're welcome.